I'm back, everyone. Hi, I'm Peter, Peter's Living Room, or as we call it from Transmedia Building on Thursdays, South Florida Live. And I have with me a good friend. He's been on Peter's Living Room. He's been on Army of Followers. He's been on Cannabis Conversations. Uh, and probably
go
something
wherever.
else. Yeah, we just point him in a direction and he goes.
Correct.
Dr. Terry Lyles, welcome to
Thank you.
welcome to Thursday.
No, it's awesome. Love
Yeah.
Thursdays.
All right. It's like I know so much about what you're doing. I'm amazed at what you're doing. And, we'll talk about phittech, which is biometrics.
Right.
And you can go into detail for these listeners in case they haven't
Sure.
heard you. But this is the kind of thing that you can know exactly what's happening to your body, what the effects your body is having real time
Sure.
against whatever it is you're doing.
That's right.
Right. So whether, an athlete or just the person walking to the supermarket.
Yep. Well, it's all based around all my studies and writings are all about stress.
Yeah.
And how to deal with stress, good
Right.
stress and bad stress. Because most
Right.
people only think that stress is bad only.
No, I
it's
learned
not.
differently.
Yeah. Well, and some people figure it out. Others just keep bumping against that gravity wall because stress is nothing more than gravity.
Right.
It's not good nor bad. It's neutral. And it's how we define it and utilize it that makes it either good or bad.
Okay. So your definition or explanation of good, I was going to say good sex, good stress.
That's good. That's good stress.
Yeah.
In most cases.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Okay. What is good stress then?
Well, good stress is basically stress in general is gravity is energy expenditure. So
Yeah.
it's any kind of energy that we expend, and whether it's mental, emotional, spiritual, physical.
Okay.
So those four quadrants are what I consider four wheels on the same car.
Right.
We need them all to work. You can only have one bad flat, you got a bad day. You don't need four flats.
Right.
So I could be off on one of my scores biometrically or intellectually in one of those four quadrants, and it can really affect my day.
Right.
So good stress is aligning those four capacities
So
to
basically,
make it work.
this went great, that went great, that went fabulously, that sucked, I had a terrible day.
Well, a lot of people end up there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way. So in other words, in our biometric biological system, my mind body capacity, all of us,
Yeah.
is the mental side that starts it. So it's MESP, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. So
Right.
on the mental section, it's how well can I stay in a concentrated state and stay focused and, fight against distraction. So that's the first quadrant. Second quadrant's emotional, which means how well can I navigate things that might upset me or hijack me or push me around.
Right.
Anger, fearful, stressful, whatever.
Right.
Spiritually is my belief system. So it's like what I believe about the corporate values, if I'm a corporate person, what do I believe about my family values, my personal values, and how true am I to those things? In other words, by being here today like this, I'm sure I can speak this for you, but this isn't work for me or you.
Right.
This is easy.
Right.
Why? Because it aligns with our values.
Right.
So in our spiritual section, we're pretty high
Right.
because this is what we do. This is easy, right?
Right.
So that's the spiritual side. The physical side is energy levels. How much energy do I wake up with in the morning? How do I sustain that through the day?
Right.
And how much do I have at the end of my day? So those four quadrants, if aligned correctly, can be equated to good stress. Bad stress is when I have leakage in one of those areas or more.
Okay.
It's really that simple.
Yeah. Well, I like when my energy level expires at the time I'm ready to go to sleep.
And that's a great day because that means
Yeah.
you put it all in places that it probably
Right.
needed
And
to be.
timed it right.
And then we fall asleep and we recharge our batteries
Right.
physically.
Right.
And hopefully we're recharging our batteries periodically through the day, every 2 hours or so, through recovery zones, as I call pit stops, as I do racing. So it's the same thing. We need to recharge our energies, refuel, retire, do that throughout the day. If we do that correctly, you can have plenty of energy even when you get home with the people you love, the animals you
Right.
love, neighbors you probably just have to put up with. Whatever the case might be, you have something when you get home versus coming home just depleted and have nothing.
Okay. And unless I missed it, we're talking about stress, good stress,
Yeah.
and bad stress, the leakage.
Correct.
What's techno stress?
Techno stress is the effect. It's actually been a study that's been around for 25 years.
Really?
And it was a study that was going on way back when I was in school, but it was studying the effects more ergonomically. Like technology on us. Like if I'm working a machine in a factory and I'm doing the same movements every time ergonomically, what is that doing to my body?
Right.
That's kind of how it started.
An uncomfortable chair.
That's correct. Chair, posture, that's how it started. But obviously, as the 90s came in the late 90s and computing systems began to really integrate with society outside of the big mainframes that only large computer companies had. And when we started getting into the personal PC world in the mid 90s, the studies began to change because we began to see changes in personal behavior. Like now the computer became this thing that was something I need, not just something I play with. It was work related.
Right.
You know, emails was starting then, and I could search the World Wide Web and see what was out there instead of going to the encyclopedia on the desk. And so it really changed the world. So technostress is the study of good and bad stress related to technology interfacing with human beings.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting because go back to the late 90s when the internet and personal computers were starting to explode's not the word, but, you know,
really expand.
Yeah. You used to go online and it was, wow, this is cool. Look what I could find out online.
Absolutely.
Side note there is I was always amazed that when people say, well, just Google it. It's like, you realize somebody had to enter all that information into Google.
And it's amazing.
And you could, it is.
You can just say a word now on Google or a phrase and it'll find it.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's truly, we live now, you know,
but
in that
it's so
era.
commonplace now. It's not like it's a special or unique. That's just the way it is.
You tell a young person today, almost any age, like pretty much millennials on down.
Yeah.
Go get an encyclopedia. They don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
You know, and surely if you tell them to go check out what a typewriter was, you know, they're like, typing? I understand typing, but they've never seen one. So we've gone through this evolution of the information world. Yeah. And so technostress is really understanding the effects of technology on the mind-body capacity. So what I do is I reverse engineer that to say technology is not necessarily a bad thing, no more than stress is. However, it must be modulated. You must know how to use it or it's going to use you.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Coming forward here, you have a book called Performance Under Pressure.
That's correct.
Coming out within the next few months.
June, I'm told.
Okay.
End of June.
Well, you know, right.
It's been a long journey, but yeah, it's June.
Okay. The basis of the book?
It's really how do we take stress and how do we perform under that pressure, whether it's at work, at home, raising children, stay-at-home moms, CEO of a company. I deal with fighter pilots with the Air Force, debriefing post-traumatic stress disorder individuals in the military, race car drivers, professional athletes. So whatever your pressure is, it's literally identifying what your performance is, understanding pressure, and learning how to perform under that pressure to get healthy and measurable results.
So it's, in a way, it's a how to, when you're in this situation, how to work through it.
Yes.
And get back on track, so to
how
speak.
To utilize it. Yeah, my other books, you know, I've been writing about stress. This is my fourth book, I think. Yeah. So I've been writing about stress for a while. Yeah. 2003, I think, was my first one. And it all just started in this modulation process like most of our careers, you know. Yeah. So I started writing basically about stress in 2003. The first book was called The Secret to Navigating Life's Storms. So it was more about just how do you fly through your life. And I used a flight analogy of a pilot on how to navigate those four quadrants: mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. Right. And the reason I came up with all this is it was my dissertation. And my dissertation was, my hypothesis was avoiding burnout. Okay, so that was the whole thing I was looking for, is how do you avoid burnout? And so I turned that into a business. Right. So from 1994 to now, I've been doing one thing basically, and many different metrics processes, which is how do you deal with pressure, stress, and navigate that in your life? Can people
burn out temporarily?
Of course. Yeah, it's just generalized fatigue.
Yeah.
Burnout typically is utilized more in the physical section on when you've exhausted all of your energy. It's more than fatigue. You can't get out of bed. You're struggling. You're on medications to try to find out what's happening. Your concentration, weight gain, weight loss is an issue, energy, vitality. I typically, and most in the medical world, would look at burnout as kind of like the worst of. It's kind of like a psychological stroke. It changes your path. It slows you down and sometimes stops you. I deal with people that have chronic fatigue, disorders, any type of autoimmune system disorders, Crohn's, you can go into a whole list of them. But it's basically where the immune system gets suppressed enough that your body begins breaking down. So generalized fatigue is something we all struggle with. That's easy to correct because we're just not navigating correctly. But if your plane's in a 45-degree dive and you survived that landing somehow, okay, that's burnout. So it's severe.
That's severe, right.
It's a Sully Sullivan landing in the Hudson. It doesn't happen a lot. But if you did survive that, you had trauma. So that trauma has to be dealt with. I just talked to someone today who just lost the spouse and they're grieving as of a few months. It's tough. That's not burnout. That's just grief. Grief is a transitional state from past reality.
And you got to work. You got to let it work.
You navigate that.
Right.
And there's healthy and unhealthy ways to do that. So it depends on what level you're talking about, but typically burnout is like what it sounds like. It's the match doesn't work anymore.
Right. I cause stress.
Yes.
I do.
Well,
I mean, I go home.
I think we all do.
And it's like, why aren't you talking to me?
Right.
I said, I've been talking for the last 8 hours.
Right.
I want to shut up. I don't want to talk.
Right.
I'm done.
No, and it is challenging because, we live in a connected world where, I'm at it all day as well. So whether it's emails, it's phone calls, it's doing this, it's texting, it's doing proposals, it's doing all these things. And like you said, by the time you get home, you're out of energy, so to speak.
Right.
The trick is, and here's what I train in corporate America as an example, is using your commute time to transition, to be ready when you get home, that you're all there, that you don't show up and say, I can't talk, but you show up and say, I recharge for your 40-minute drive, and you use that 40 minutes intentionally to debrief your day, that when you walk in the door, you're like, honey, I'm home, because you used your time to debrief your stress.
Right, that's if you want to.
And that's the tricks of the trade that I write about.
But it's funny you say that. For years, I lived in New York. I commuted. I had an hour to an hour and 20-minute commute back and forth every day. I moved out of New York, and I worked 7 minutes from my house. I found early on, instead of going from point A to point B in 7 minutes, I left point A, and I went all the way around and came. Took me 35 minutes.
Yes.
And I needed that 35 minutes to separate my day and get ready for my evening. 7 minutes didn't cut it for me.
Well, and that is the power of what I consider oscillation. The old oscillating fans that are constantly moving. Our mind-body capacities are meant to keep moving. We're machines. Any machinery that doesn't move for long periods of time becomes a problem because it'll rust, it'll fatigue, it'll atrophy. Our bodies and minds are the same way.
Right.
The mind will get weaker if you don't use it. The body gets weaker if you don't use it, right?
Right.
So our commute time is the strengthening process in between one performance and the other. So when I wake up in the morning, I prepare to go to wherever I'm working.
Okay. Let's combine with the few minutes we have left. Let's combine using the body and it rebounding, it reacting to you moving. Phittech, biometrics.
Yes.
You work with, I know, pilots with the Indy racing.
Yes.
Powerboats. Are they part
all
of
kinds?
It?
Any kind.
Right.
And not you any have that you could talk about.
You have where in real time, at any fraction of a second, you can see how the stress on the body and the mind is affecting, I'll say, the athlete, the person,
the performer.
The performer. How long have you been working on this one to bring it to where it is now?
On this particular,
because it's functional now.
It is. Oh yes. Yeah. In this particular function, about 3 years. It's been almost a 10-year study. Doing it kind of in an archaic way. Like before 2015, I was using it with IndyCar, NASCAR drivers and pilots, but it was a longer system. I really didn't have all the technology.
You put a monitor on them?
We put any kind of monitor we had. Now technology has caught up to that, which is a lot easier to use. And we can take that biotelemetry information and convert it into utilizable performance enhancements. So at the Indy 500 in 2015, I had one driver wired up. It's a long story. I'll give you the short version. He's the one that made it. We had three wired up. One crashed out the week before and almost killed himself. The other one crashed out in the first lap. I had one left. I only had three devices. So I was down to one and praying it would work. So he drove with the race with the strap on, and we were able to broadcast it live on ABC. So if anybody wants to see that, they can go to my website, just terrylyles.com, or you can even Google Indy 500 biometrics, and I show up and they'll be able to see that. That was our pinnacle. So that was Indy 500 2015. From that time on, we realized that we had cracked the code, and we began to circle and cycle that process that now we have it into a 3 millimeter chip that we can put on your body, around your body, and eventually in your body to monitor.
What about biometric clothing?
Yes, we're in that space as well. And we have some design technologies that we're using. We're actually going to do some testing, and we have done some with the Air Force. We're getting ready to do some with NASA to work with astronauts because the problem they have is obviously gravity, which is their stress. They float around, so they have to be tied off so they just don't leave their atmosphere. So again, gravity's not the problem.
I'm flying.
Exactly. So we're working on a bunch of things, including conductive fabric, biometric technology, but it's all back to the book that's coming out in June, Performance Under Pressure. So what does that mean? How do you perform? The average person walking around, if they have a Fitbit on or an Apple Watch or whatever, Garmin, I'll walk up to people, and I do this on an ongoing trial basis. I'll say, hey, what's your heart rate? They pop it. They go, it's 73. Great. What does that mean? I don't know. They have no clue. It's just a number. We interpret that number. What does that number mean to you? Sitting still, moving, asleep, awake. So we put interpretation and coaching to that interprets what those numbers mean, because most of us is raw data. We have no clue. It's like telling a 3-year-old it's 2:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah, what does that mean?
So what? I'm hungry. I don't know what time. Does I just know my stomach's growling? It's a bigger alarm clock than the clock on the wall. We just don't know what we know. So the book goes into that, talking about, there's actually a whole stress section on technology, good, bad, and ugly, and how to utilize, because we're not going to get away from technology.
Okay, so to find out when the book becomes available, are there pre-orders on the book, or
we're getting ready to? Actually, we're doing that in the next, I hope, the next week or so. So if they stay in touch, they can go right to my website and just email me there if they want to do that. There's an info button there. They can hit info. And they can.
It's Terry Lyles, Lyles.
That's correct. That's correct. TerryLyles.com. We're going through some renditions even on the website, because everything's going to start changing over with the new book coming out.
Things change so quickly anyway. I mean,
so excited about it. This has been almost a 2-year project putting together, because we were waiting to write the final chapters about the techno stress, and it's constantly changing. So part of my challenge was, when do you just let go and say you can print it? Because I just learned something yesterday that's going to change in 5 days. You know what I mean? So at some point you just have to go, I just got to cut it off.
I say that all the time, especially when I speak with artists, whether it's
never
painting,
finished.
It's never finished. It could be a song, it could be a canvas. At some point it's like, you know what? I got to stop. I may revise it. I may revise it down the road.
That's right.
But I'm done.
That's a whole nother show. When do you say no? Because it's just, you got to stop at some point. But the cool thing is that life just continues to metabolize. So excited about that.
All right. Terry Lyles, Dr. Terry Lyles, everybody, terrylyles.com. Go to his website. Get stay informed when the book is coming out sometime in June, when you can order it.
And they'll see it on. We're high.
And definitely go and either on his site or Google Indianapolis 2015 biometrics, and check out what his stuff does. It's really great. Thanks for coming in. Good to see you
again.
All right, then we're making a habit of it.
Yes.
I'm Peter's Living Room, South Florida Live, Transmedia Building. I can't say it often enough, but I do thank you for spending some of your afternoon with me. So again, thank you, everybody. Don't forget, Peter's Living Room is on Monday through Thursday night at 7:00, and our hours here starting next week will be from 10 to 1 instead of 11 to 2-ish. And so we'll still have great guests, great shows. We're just inching it up a little bit. And enjoy the rest of your day. Catch me on the Sports Exchange at 5 o'clock on WEINetwork.com. We actually have the manager of the New York Mets will be on. We have Jonathan Mayo, journalist from Major League Baseball, going to be talking about spring training and the start of
Ask him if
baseball
he has
season.
any stress. You know somebody who might be able to mitigate that with.
All right. Who was it? Manager? Of the Mets?
Everybody.
No stress. Everything runs smoothly with the Mets. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Yeah, those guys are always stressed out.